Carrie Carrie's in her car, as you can see. Do you wanna explain why you're in your car?
Oh, there's always technology issues, but internet went down. So I went to Starbucks and then the internet went down there. So now I'm on my iPad on a high peak so I can get all 5 bars of service. So, yes, I'm dedicated to Facebook Lives. No matter where I
I
have to be, I am here to share my knowledge.
I was gonna say you are a dedicated employee making this all happen, you know?
Oh,
But
that's
yes, dedicated to sharing knowledge, of course, that is our passion here at the
yeah.
Dog Gurus.
And the one
Uh,
good thing, the puppy's not with me, so it'll be a quiet call.
your dog's pretty good, unlike
Yeah.
my 3 doggies that will bark anytime somebody drives down our street, so we do have some people logging on with us right now, so can you just say hello in the chat so we know that we're technically functioning properly? That would be wonderful, I'd really appreciate that.
Hopefully, Mikey will join us from House of Hounds because she was just on the last call with me.
Oh, good.
She'll
Yeah, and
know
she
my
always says hi.
crazy technology. And
Oh,
there she
there she
is.
is. Awesome, thank you so much, and Shell says hello, so hello and welcome, thank you for joining us.
Dogs World Resort. Where are they located?
From Dogs where are you from, Dogs World? Can you write in the chat where you're located? I wanna say f
It
oh,
sounds like
I was gonna
Florida.
say
Oh,
Florida
Florida.
because
There you
Disney
go.
World. Very cool. And Jupiter, Florida, I like that even
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll get started. I'm Shantae Marquez, and Carrie Campbell is next to me. We are Dog Gurus Profit Network coaches. The Dog Gurus helps pet care businesses launch, grow, and profit, as well as provides pet care staff training systems and coaching services. In fact, we are the only consulting and coaching company where every coach you will meet has owned and operated or are currently owning and operating their own pet care facility. We understand your challenges because we've been there
Yeah.
and we can help you. So next week we'll be off because Facebook Live, but we'll be back on the following week, Wednesday, October 25th, and we're going to be discussing how to train your staff to be career-minded pet care professionals. And if Anna's listening, we might ask you to join us. So we'll talk to you about that in a minute.
Yeah.
So, recently I've been observing a growing trend within education for pet care facility owners and staff. And it just made me kind of think and wonder. And the promotion is aversive training methods as a means to handling dogs in pet care facilities.
Mhm.
And this approach really led me to reflect on our own principles here at the Dog Gurus. And at the Dog Gurus, we firmly believe in the power of positive reinforcement for pet and staff, for that matter
Right.
too.
I was just gonna say staff as well.
Yeah, but today we're going to be talking about the dogs, but it all relates with each other. But what we do know, and we know for sure, is that positive reinforcement handling has a profound impact on the behavior and well-being of the pets. So, as we dive into this topic of positive reinforcement handling, I want to acknowledge that for some of us, this approach might not come naturally. And we're not here to make anyone feel bad, but we're here to bring a new perspective. But positive reinforcement handling is not just a set of techniques, it's actually a mindset. It's a way of understanding and interacting with our canine companions. And I also want us all to consider this. If you weren't brought up in an environment that emphasized positive reinforcement parenting, maybe your staff wasn't either. And that could be challenging to distinguish between what is aversive approaches and what is a positive approach. That you might not even be able to recognize it. The lines can be really blurry. So that's why I believe that this is precisely why we should be discussing this topic, and it's really important. And we're here to explore the nuances, share insights, and together gain a deeper understanding of why positive reinforcement is not just a preference, but a powerful choice for enhancing the well-being of the dogs that we love and care for. So, Carrie, can you start off? Can you just explain the overall philosophy of the Dog Gurus on how to handle and care for dogs?
Absolutely. And thank you for pulling this topic, Shantae, because I think it's really, really critical. And it goes back to the foundation of wanting every dog that's in your care to leave your facility better off than when they arrived. And that is, emotional, mentally, physically, we want them to have a positive experience. It's very easy, especially in a group play setting, to have dogs that are shy, kind of those wallflowers, those that are really exuberant, and then those that are so overstimulated they start to exhibit really inappropriate play behaviors. And so the goal for the staff is to be able to redirect all of those dogs to a lower threshold, to kind of a more neutral play space, and be able to interact with them in a mean that is only working one-on-one with a dog, and that you're not doing something that can potentially impact all the dogs in your care because you're trying to correct one dog. And inadvertently you're, whether it's yelling or water bottles or noisemakers, all kinds of things that are out there that are more aversive, they're having a negative impact on all the dogs that are in your facility. So our focus is really to maintain that one-on-one relationship with dogs and make sure that it's all positive in the encounters and what the dog experiences while they're in your care.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I hate to say this, but I actually, didn't realize I was using aversive techniques when I first started my facility. And I think that's why maybe I have so much compassion if, you come from a place where you're still using those. But I didn't realize, like, my natural instinct is to be like, hey, stop. But that's not good, and that's not good if everybody at your facility is yelling. So, I just want to say that it's okay, and that I didn't realize I was doing it until I started being educated by the dog gurus
Mhm.
and started using the materials, the learning materials that we provide. But it made a big impact, and hey, my facility was a lot quieter. So,
It's amazing. It really is, because when you start to notice the nuances of dogs communicating and you can see something before it starts to escalate, interrupt it at that point, and literally the interruption could just be calling the dog to you, asking them for an alternative behavior like a sit or a down, or, something that will just in that split second break their focus. And they may go right back to it, especially young adolescent dogs, they get into that humping phase or, some inappropriate behavior. And what I used to always tell my staff is that, yeah, so, it's maybe some minor humping that's going on, but you have to think about the dog that's the target or the victim of that humping. And they're paying the same rate to be in daycare all day to get humped. It's like somebody stuck a kick me sign or a hump me sign on the back of their, shirt. So you do have to consider all of the dogs that are in your care and whether one dog is actually the dog that's having a negative impact on a bunch of dogs in your play group. So, and you're right, I mean, a lot of times in the beginning, we don't necessarily know that some of the tools we are using are adversive because we're not thinking, we're not using like choke chains, or, we're not pinning the dogs in these like alpha rolls on the floor. I mean, those are like really extreme, but sometimes just using something that has a negative impact, especially on like those wallflower dogs that are a little bit more shy, the role of the daycare professional needs to be one that is a champion for the dogs that are less confident, and a protector from the standpoint of being able to redirect the dogs that are maybe a little too confident in how they're playing.
that's great. And so I want to dig into some of the things that you mentioned is redirecting. So what specifically does that mean for somebody to redirect if they are seeing, like, let's say humping, because that happens all the time.
All the time, right?
So how would you explain your staff member to handle that situation?
So in my facility, we did a lot of kind of three-step processes, but with any type of redirection, it can start with a verbal. Think about how you redirect staff. There's a verbal warning, a written warning, and then maybe there's like a sit down, this is your termination factor. Same with dogs, so maybe verbally you're correcting them, and that can just be a or maybe you're just calling the dog, Shante, come here, and having the dog come over to you. And the minute you break their focus, that's what you're doing. You're breaking the focus from that behavior that is undesirable, and you're having the dog come to you. And once they're there, it could just be a praise, good dog, and giving them some loving. And then, chances are, if they're really overstimulated, they're going to go right back to that same behavior. A lot of times, if it is a humping scenario, they tend to go back to the very same dog. So what we would do is try a second time. If they they didn't redirect by coming to us, walk over, put a slip lead on them, give them, 10, 15 seconds sitting next to us, again, letting them go. If they go back to it, then we started what was more of our kind of rotational process, which is, put the dog in an enclosure. So whether that's a crate that you have in your play space or, a physical enclosure that you take them outside, you want to have them associate that I do this behavior, I go in the box. And it's short. You can't put a dog in a kennel for 30 minutes and expect them to be like, oh, woe is me. I was so naughty. I'll never do it again. Because that's not how they're wired. But if you put them in a kennel for, 30 seconds and let them back out, and then they do it again, put a slip lead over them, put them right back in the kennel again, 30 seconds. So it's that I go in the kennel, or I do this behavior, I go in the box. I do this behavior, I go in the box. I do this behavior. Oh, wait, I don't want to go back in the box. And that association is what they can comprehend. So that's like really starts to kind of break that cycle.
Yeah. So it sounds fairly easy. And what I think is probably the hardest part is just making sure that you or your staff is consistent at it.
Absolutely.
Consistency is key.
Right. And I think that comes in two forms. I think that you have your processes or those procedures of how you want those certain inappropriate behaviors handled, but that you also have your staff all using the same terminology. So, short commands that are very consistent. So off, down, sit, in, out, kennel, whatever those terms are going to be, that you have those, printed and put up on every play space so that everybody sees that as a constant reminder. Because if you have staff that are like, no, off, down, they're yelling all these different things, the dogs are just confused. And so they don't know what exactly you want. So the more crystal clear we are, the easier it is to redirect the behaviors and to make them conform to what we're trying to get out of them in the play group.
So I know that we all use the same language because all my staff went through Pet Gurus College and Knowing Dogs, and yours did too. And that's where we came up with, using the same language. But how do you deal with those customers that come in and they're like, oh, my dog is doing this specific training and we're using this language and it's different from your language? Like, how do you deal with that? What do you do?
So I think it depended. We had a couple of dogs that were very smart, high drive dogs that were great as puppies and then ended up kind of graduating from our program because they needed something that was a little bit more like university based and not daycare. But when pet parents were working on something specific, we would try to use their commands, but we didn't want to use the command in a scenario where we were redirecting the dog in a group type setting, because that would be confusing to the dogs that were existing in the play group. And I am not a like certified professional dog trainer, but from years of experience in that group setting, dogs seem to be able to differentiate the environment to know that in this circumstance, if we're using the word, I have to think of a German command like down versus Fuß. I think Fuß is down in German, but that they will understand what we're asking of them, because dogs don't speak German. I mean, they don't speak English either. What they get used to is the repetition of the command, what it sounds like, and what we're asking from that specific command. So I think as long as the cues are similar and consistent, then they understand in the different environments. But
Great. So can you give some specific examples of how your staff was using positive reinforcement handling in group play?
absolutely. We had, and sometimes you have to figure out, some dogs, it's a toy or something, a treat may be their motivator. And you have to be careful with those because they're high value in a group setting. Maybe praise is their motivator. But everything that we did when we interacted with the dog was on a positive note. So if we were asking for, a sit, or maybe we were just asking like to redirect them, that they came and when we called them, they came to us, a lot of praise. And praise can be voice, it can be high pitch, good boy, good dog, or it can be touch. You just kind of have to figure out what is the motivator for that specific dog. But same thing, some dogs are more touch friendly than they are verbal, and vice versa. Same with staff. You have those staff that want to be, praised in your morning, shout out, little daily huddle with staff, and others that don't want to be called out at all. They would rather just be told separately in the hallway, hey, you did a great job today. So it's I guess it's really part of the ownership, the leadership, to be able to help their staff understand the nuances of how to recognize each individual dog's motivation, and that will help them come up with what those techniques are. And the other thing, as far as having really good communication with your staff, so whether you're using Slack or GroupMe or one of the different when I work apps where you have those chats, that when somebody discovers something about a specific dog, that they list it. So the next person who works with that dog knows what works and what doesn't work. And that makes the whole experience not only for the staff, because they will get less frustrated because the dog is actually starting to do what you're asking of them, but also for the dog because they're not as frustrated because now they know what you're asking and they can perform that.
Awesome. And Anna, she is listening. So said
She
Platz
is
is down.
nuts.
And Sabine says Fuß is heel. So we got our German speakers on.
Yeah. Hey, I can sing opera in German, but yeah, I can't speak German. So
You are a lady of many talents,
I
I
know.
must say. So, using positive reinforcement handling, did you notice a decrease in incidents or injuries within your play groups?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think just the dynamic of having that more one-on-one relationship with the dogs can really decrease that. And then, the other thing we used to tell our staff, because they would go through, a number of weeks of training with Pet Guru College and knowing dogs, and they always had somebody they were shadowing. And when they got to the point that the employee they were shadowing with wanted them to be the one that was doing the leading and the redirecting, is letting them know that in the beginning, your gut may tell you one thing, but you're not sure you want to interrupt a dog. Interrupt them, no matter how low level it is. Interrupt them because they will go back to playing. They will go back to an inappropriate behavior. But the more you interrupt it at a low level, the less likely it is to escalate to something more severe.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's a really good point. So, what did your clients say about the positive reinforcement? Did they like that matter? Did they think it was, strict enough or useful? I mean, how did your clients react to this method?
So, from a reverse psychology standpoint, we used it on our clients all the time. So we put a sign up in our lobby that we were like the no judgment zone of the daycare world, right? We didn't want anybody to feel conspicuous about working with their dog. So if there was something that, we always ask pet parents, bring your dog up to the gate, ask them for a sit and a wait, and then we'll open it and the staff person will take your dog. And we had some people that would just be like, ah, and they're running behind their doodle that's like, hopping on its back legs, getting to the gate, jumping up and being ridiculous. And our staff would just stand there. And one of the things we did was we made sure our staff understood that we were 100% behind them, so that if they were standing there and the pet parent didn't do what we asked, that they had the authority from us to say, could you please ask your dog for a sit? And so when we saw that, we would actually praise the parent as well. We'd be like, great job, Shantae. Look at how well he's listening to you. And it's funny because they would walk out of there feeling like, I finally got my dog to do something today.
I mean, yes, that's what we were saying. It works on people and the dogs. I mean,
And on
this
the
is goes across all boards and your children.
yeah.
So, do you have any like testimonials that stand out in your head from customers of yours?
Oh my gosh. I just think of well, okay, here's a funny one. We had a dog that came to us 5 days a week for maybe 7 or 8 years. But in the beginning, when he was a puppy, as soon as the weather changed from summer to winter, he had never seen snow. So he didn't know to go potty outside. And, he would pee outside, but there was something about going poop outside that was just really confusing for him. And we were talking to the pet parent about this, and we were trying, to make sure if we saw that he was giving some sort of sign by a door or, sniffing around on the floor, that we would try to, get him outside to the play yard so he would have a second opportunity outside of recess to go outside. And so she was like, oh gosh, it's really hard because I've been, paper training him at home. And so we're like trying to collaborate on all of this. And then one day by himself, he pooped outside. And can I just tell you, over the two-way radio, the celebration that happened in my facility? And then I called his mom at work and I'm like, you will not believe what just happened. He pooped outside. So then it was working with her that every time it happened to make sure she was praising it, that she wasn't doing
Reinforce it.
anything accidentally to reinforce him going inside. And so, yeah, so just, one example, kind of a silly situation. But the other thing too is that I think because we were enforcing with our staff and also backing them up as far as that interaction they had each morning at drop off and in the evenings at pickup, that they knew that the dogs were seeing that consistency from all staff members, not just from ownership and leadership. So they appreciated that. And And that consistency, the consistency of cues, the consistency of the positive reinforcement, it made the dog's behavior outside of daycare much better. And that's what they noticed first, was that their dog started to, behave better at home, wasn't as, reactive to cars going by, or would sit and wait at a door. I can't tell you how many times we had people that said, my dog is sitting at the back door, but he won't go outside. What have you trained them? What's the magic word? And I'm like, out. And so, in our new pet parent packet, we would always give them a list of the commands that we use, because we were really, into very short words that were easy for the dogs to understand. So again, it was like in, out, sit, down. It's just something very simple. So, but they're trying all of these different words to get the dog, come on, let's go, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, just say out. And the dog's like,
So I think positive reinforcement handling has a number of benefits. And I think there's benefits, look, obviously for the business in general, because it will enhance your reputation. It will give you great marketability of your business. It reduces your liability because you're going to have less injuries.
Mhm,
It will reduce staff churn, and it will increase staff morale because they're going to feel good about the techniques that they're using.
mhm. Their engagement
Um,
with the dogs definitely increases. So they start to enjoy it more. I think there's that vicious cycle that occurs as far as, you've got kind of a more chaotic play group. There isn't a whole lot of control. The staff aren't really well trained. And so they are thrown to the wolves in this group, and they're like, this is too stressful, and they leave. And then, there's inconsistency of the play again. And so you bring in a new staff person, and that cycle just repeats over and over. But having those techniques to make them really understand and enjoy that interaction with the dogs makes the overall experience for everybody better.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, the most important, it really benefits the pets. I
Absolutely.
mean, they're
Yeah.
not gonna go away from the facility, being scared or frightened or having
Mhm.
negative experiences. Hopefully, they walk away feeling really good and are so happy to come back the next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Diana's asking, let's see, could that be a lack of confidence as their part as well?
On the staff or the dogs or both, because it can be.
Yeah, I'm not sure which what she meant. Do you mean staff or the dogs?
And again, I think that goes back to making sure that the person who is observing the
Staff.
staff, yeah. So making sure that they understand what the body language is that the dogs are communicating, and that they understand the difference between not only stress signals but calming signals, and the different, placements of ears and tails. And I mean, there's just the mouth. There's so many ways that they communicate that's physical versus verbal, and how we communicate as people. So I remember the first time I put staff through knowing dogs, and those aha moments that occurred after everybody got through it. The biggest return on investment for me was when I had 6 full-time staff for 6 play groups, and then one person that was a rover that covered all those lunches. And that rover would start at 10 a.m. on the first, classroom to cover. Next thing you know, by the time she gets to like the sixth person, those transition had taken so long, she was like 25 minutes late. And so, she was supposed to be paid for the 6 hours for the 6 lunches. And, suddenly she's working 6.5 hours. All of a sudden, everybody knew what these behaviors were. They knew how to redirect them. And that those transitions got down to like 30 seconds to a minute. And that made things so much more efficient. So getting them to speak the common language from the staff standpoint will give them more confidence and help them in the playgroup setting.
Yeah, I mean, the lack of confidence is one experience, but it's also training. I mean, and I think one of the number one things that I hear when people have staff issues or confidence levels, it's because they've rushed through training. They wanna do
Mhm.
training in, like, 2 days,
Right.
and that it's just that can't happen. I mean,
Mm.
you can't consume everything you need to know and have that experience to handle a group play
Mhm.
properly and safely. So that's why we provided these staff training courses for you, and so we have Pet Guru College and we have Knowing Dogs. So you can put your staff through this and teach them the foundations. And then in conjunction with that, you do on the job training with them. And that's really important too. It's not it's, just putting it in front of the computer and watching these courses, these short bit micro learning courses is not
Mhm.
going to teach them everything. It has to
Right.
be multiple ways to learn. But Anna says that is why our staff can't touch a dog until they complete up to module 4 of knowing
Yep.
dogs. Yeah, we made them go through 101, and then with shadowing with another person, they would go through 201, but they'd have to be shadowing with somebody in the group plays. And then after that, if they felt confident enough and we felt confident in them, then they can start managing the plays by
Yeah.
themselves. And that's like we're talking about maybe a month, 2 months process, depending on how often they work. So Diana says, yes, I had our staff go through the Dog Gurus Knowing Dogs training, and sometimes I feel like they didn't digest information. How can I re-engage?
Lunch and learns.
Yes, lunch and learns. So if you see something that is commonly going on where you need to, they're like, oh, they keep doing this thing in a different way than I want them, or they're stumbling over this, or they're having this challenge. We have a ton of lunch and learns available. I think we can look at them in our blogs too, but they're in
Mhm.
the LMS system. And they're in Pet Guru College, and you can take a module and just show it to them, remind them, hey, let's go back and watch this again during a lunch, or you can even do a whole little discussion on it. Carrie, you know how to conduct the lunch and learns better than I do.
So they're actually in the library, which is on our main
Okay.
website. And yeah, you can pick any topic you want. And, let's just say it has to do with, how to use a proper slip lead on a dog or something as simple as a mechanical issue. There's a online version of it, and then there's a PDF that you can download, and that has like a summary that then goes into the details of, this is how we want you to execute this task. And they're brief, and there's something that I used to use it as an empowerment tool for my staff. So let's say, Shante, you come up to me and you say, hey, I've just noticed that everybody is handling, dogs that are jumping up on them differently. And so I would say, Shante, go to the lunch and learns and pull a topic out of there, and then ask that person to lead it at our next staff meeting. And that got them engaged, and it made them feel like their concerns were being met, but they also had an opportunity to be the one that was kind of leading and reminding their coworkers of how to do things properly.
Yeah, and once you get like into the middle of knowing dogs, like especially the 201 courses, they're under 10 minutes. Most of them are 5 minutes. So even if you want to reinforce something that was taught in knowing dogs, just in the beginning of the huddle of the day, have your whole group go around and watch that video for 5 minutes, and then start your day of work and remind them. So it's just, again, consistency, reinforcement, reminding, coaching.
Right.
You just gotta, it just never, coaching never ends.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, we should all be lifelong learners, right? Because we'll get stagnant otherwise. So sometimes learning is just relearning or reminding ourselves of something that we already know and we've just kind of let slip. So, yeah, that engagement part is really critical with your staff.
Yeah, and Anna says after they complete each module, they review it with a supervisor to make sure they understand and explain how it's relevant to our facility. So you're
Mm.
reinforcing what
Yeah.
they taught. That's great.
Yeah.
So I will go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you guys for joining us. This has been a really good topic. And remember, if you're using some of the aversive techniques that we've discussed, don't feel bad. We just want you to do the best you can. But once you know better, do better,
Better.
as Maya Angelou says. So, and if you're eager to implement these positive reinforcement techniques and train your staff in these methods, we're here to support you every step of the way. Feel free to
Absolutely.
explore Pet Guru College, and you'll find valuable resources and guidance to help you transition to those more compassionate and effective approaches. I'm going to go ahead and post the link in the chat. Carrie, do you want to, while I'm posting this, do you want to go ahead and tell them about our pet care business Facebook group?
Yeah. So we have a free to join Facebook group that's called Grow Your Pet Care Business. And she'll put that link in there as well. We just have two rules, and that's be nice and don't try to sell things. So this is not an area where we want to have anybody soliciting. It's just for fun, for good exchanges, to get ideas and suggestions from others that are in the industry around us. So it's got a lot of followers. So it's a really good community to join and be actively involved with. And we are also going to be at the Pet Boarding and Daycare Expo East in Hershey, Pennsylvania, the first week of November. Shantae and I will be speaking. Whoop, whoop.
Yep, we're excited.
So, and we'll have a booth there. So, plan to join us for that as well. And then on the other side, if you're interested in our staff training, don't hesitate to go to our website, thedoggurus.com, and schedule a free demo. I am happy to spend, 15, 30 minutes with you and show you all of our products and how they work.
Excellent. Great. I'm going to go ahead and so that little link in there, the Learn S, that's for Pet Guru College. Here is the Grow Your Pet Care Business page. And of course, it will be for playback. If you want to ever play back any of our lives that we're talking about, you can go to our Facebook page. There's an option in the menu that has more and a drop down, and if you'll find lives in there, and every one of our lives is recorded, so you can go ahead and play back and listen to it at any time or show your staff.
Yeah.
So,
Yay.
all right, thank you so
You
much.
can't get rid
We
of us.
will,
We're just always there.
yeah, exactly. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. All
So,
right.
bye.
Have a great day.
Bye.